down there. Coming up on Vermont again. Going northbound now. Northbound Vermont. Hold that. Coming back westbound. Throwing money out. Eastbound. Come around left. Back westbound. Throwing money out.
I said my brothers was right there. I looked up to my brothers. I wanted to do whatever my brother do. I was banging the sack. I was a loke in the set. I wanted to be from the set. Just like when they went to jail, cuz that's when I snuck and got put on. Cause they was out and they kept blocking it.
Hands are out. Okay, it looks like they're giving it up. They're going to pull them out. Very dangerous situation here. Not sure if they know, that's all I got, to know if they are armed or not, but Sheriff loading them up into the vehicles right now.
Today's video is going to be about Tiny Hoodsta Foots from the Rolling 40s, aka X4's big brother. We're going to break down why they would give him 39 years in prison and how his co-defendant Tiny Clown was the one that put 4 extra on. But let's get right into it. On September 12th of 2012, at about 10 in the morning, 3 men would enter a Bank of America in a shopping center in Canyon Country. The first 2 men that entered the bank would jump over the teller counter, and the third man, who was identified as Mosley, aka Tiny Hoodsta Foots, stayed in the bank lobby. Tiny Hoodsta Foots would then point the gun around the lobby and tell everybody to get down on the ground. The other 2 robbers would then run back and forth between tellers, telling them to give them the cash or they'll be shot. And while doing that, one of the robbers would grab a stack of $20 bills that had a tracking device in the strap. And one of the bank tellers would try to activate the safety duress code. One of the robbers would then see him, grab him and bring him back to the station, where he would demand him to open up a safety deposit box. The second robber would then take all the cash, but while doing that, he would notice a tracking device and he would throw it back into the counter, which lets you know this probably wasn't his first time and he had more experience than the first dude. The whole robbery took about 2 to 3 minutes and they would run out with almost $24,000 in cash. In Tiny Foots, he would take a cell phone from one of the customers. They would all then run out of the bank and jump into a black Honda. However, there was a bank customer named John Springer that was in the parking lot, and he would see the whole thing, and he would see the Rolling 40 members speed away. That's when he would decide to follow them. They would then pull into a parking lot where he would lose sight of the Honda for a couple of seconds. He would then see it parked in the alleyway behind the shopping center with all the doors open and no one inside. But when he returned to the front of the shopping center, he would see a black Volvo SUV leaving, and he would follow it off a gut feeling. They would then approach a red light and stop. And the witness, who was Springer, would pull up on the side of them and he would look into the vehicle. He would then see Eli driving, but he couldn't see into the back because the windows were tinted. The witness would then drive back to the bank and tell law enforcement everything he just saw. And there was also another witness in the shopping center that seen them switch vehicles. They would then write down the license plate number and give it to law enforcement. They would then be spotted on the freeway and police would give chase. They would then take an off-ramp and somebody would jump out the vehicle, who later turned out to be Collins, who would be Tiny Clown. They would then re-enter the freeway at a high rate of speed, and they would take another exit, and this time, another person would jump out the vehicle and run down the embankment. They would see somebody running, holding onto his waistband, and they would assume he had a possible firearm. The vehicle would then take off again, but this time it was just Tiny Hoodsta Foots and the driver in the vehicle. They would then turn onto the 110 freeway and take the downtown exit. They would then make their way onto Vermont Ave, and once they passed Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, they would start throwing money out the vehicle. And once they reached the Rolling 40 territory, they would circle it about 10 to 15 times more, and they would start to throw cash out the window. The vehicle was then forced to stop once a big truck purposely cut them off and wouldn't let them pass through the traffic. And after a 47-minute chase, they would arrest Tiny Hoodsta Foots and the driver. And don't forget that Tiny Clown and the other robber jumped out the vehicle at different times. And they would catch Tiny Clown in someone's backyard 10 minutes after he jumped out the vehicle. But as you can see in red, the robbery suspect that jumped out after Tiny Clown was never caught and he got away. They would then search the black Honda that they left in the shopping plaza, and they would find a 5-gallon bucket lined with a trash bag, as well as 2 fluorescent jackets used for construction. And they would also find 2 cell phones, one of them belonging to the bank customer that was robbed. And the robbery detective would say that the 5-gallon bucket with a little bit of water in it would be used so that way they can submerge tracking devices. And the black Honda was reported stolen out of 42nd Street, which would be in the heart of the Rolling 40s. And even though they were caught red-handed, police would still collect 10 items from both of the vehicles and do a DNA analysis on them. And the black nylon that they found would come back to Tiny Hoodsta as a possible contributor. And the DNA from one of the shoes that were found would come back to Tiny Clown as a major contributor. And as you can see right here, Tiny Hoodsta would be Mosley, and Tiny Clown would be Collins. And the crazy part is, Tiny Clown was arrested in 2010, 2 years before this, for another bank robbery, as you can see on March 5th of 2010. But Tiny Hoodsta and Tiny Clown would be hit with 4 counts of robbery and 1 count of kidnapping. And the driver was also charged with the same exact counts, but they would add fleeing police officers and taking a vehicle without consent. They would then all sit in the county jail for exactly a year, and then they would start trial on September 9th of 2013. Eli, who was the driver, would testify on his own behalf, and he would say on September 12th of 2012, he was 29 years old at the time, and he lived in Carson. He would say he met somebody prior to that day named Timothy, who was also known as Red, and he met Red through a close friend. He would say that Red asked him if he wanted to make $50 to pick somebody up about an hour away, and he would agree. Eli would also testify that on the day of September 12th of 2012, he drove his vehicle to 45th Street and Vermont Ave to meet Red. He would then say he left his vehicle behind and drove the Volvo that was provided by Red. Red said Eli, who was the driver, was to pick up his cousin in Santa Clarita. He would say that he arrived at the shopping center at 10 a.m. and waited for Red's cousin. After about 10 minutes, the black Honda would pull up on the side of him. He would then say that 3 people hopped in the back seat of his Volvo with a black bag, and one of them was Tiny Hoodsta. He would also say that he was unaware of the robbery that just took place at Bank of America. He said he was attempting to pull over, but he was scared once he looked back and seen the bag full of money, and that Tiny Hoodsta told him to keep driving and that he was going to jump out soon. He would also say that while they were on the 110 freeway, he told Tiny Hoodsta that the news helicopter is following them, and he would say that Tiny Hoodsta replied and said good, and said he was going to throw the money out to create a crowd, so that way police wouldn't shoot them. But he would say that he never saw Tiny Hoodsta with a gun, and no one ever threatened him. But on January 31st of 2014, Tiny Hoodsta and Tiny Clown would be found guilty on all robbery counts, but they would have the kidnapping dismissed. And as you can see right here, the 3rd suspect, who was the driver, would be acquitted on all counts that same exact day. And as for the 4th suspect that jumped out after Tiny Clown, they still never found him, and he remains at large. But now let's break down their sentencing. We're going to start off with Tiny Hoodsta first. As for count 1, he would get a total of 33 years. Count 2, he would get 4 years to run consecutive. Count 3, same thing, 4 years to run consecutive. Count 4, same thing. And then the last count, another 4 years, for a total of 39 years. And he's eligible for parole in September of 2026. Now let's break down Tiny Clown's sentence. He would get 45 years for count 1. Count 2, he would get 5 years. Count 3, he would get another 5 years. Count 4, he would get another 5 years. And then the last count, he would get 9 years, for a total of 69 years. But now we're going to break down the proof that Tiny Clown is the one that put 4 extras on rolling 40s.
Big 4 extras tapped in with me. The message went along the lines of basically, hey homie, I seen your comment, Terry, and that's false. 4 extras did get put on 40s, and he named the guys he got put on 40s by. He named, I want to say Tiny Clown, I want to say Baby KS, and I'm not sure if T-Rock, not sure. But I know Clown and Baby KS, rest in peace, was for sure 2 of the names that...
Now, as you just heard Young Ant say right there, Big 4 extras would tap in with him and say that 4 extras did get put on. In that Tiny Clown, and KS was part of his put on. And as you can see right there, on his arm he would have an ODS tattoo, which stands for the dark side. But that right there would be the story of Tiny Hoodsta and Tiny Clown. And that's going to wrap up this video. But comment, like, and subscribe. I appreciate y'all. It's Respectable Rants.